I moved to California a few weeks ago. My name is Daniel and I'm a freelance journalist. I thought this historic neighborhood near the college would be perfect for my article on local folklore and urban legends. It seemed innocent enough, right? But it felt different once I was settled in. One afternoon I visited a small café. I saw an elderly woman in the corner sipping tea. I approached her hoping to hear some local ghost stories. She looked at me with sharp eyes and leaned in close. Her voice dropped to a whisper as she talked about a nearby abandoned house. She claimed it was cursed. I figured it was just another urban legend, but I could feel my curiosity growing. After that day, I dug deeper into the stories about the house. I heard tales of missing people and odd sounds echoing in the night. I felt a pull toward it, a strange force tugging at my insides. One night, I heard scratching sounds outside my window. I told myself it was just the wind, but I felt uneasy. A few nights later, I decided to visit the house. It was a big, old Victorian with broken windows and tangled weeds everywhere. The front door creaked open as I approached, almost like it wanted me to come inside. I stepped in, and my breath caught in my throat. The air felt heavy. A chill wrapped around me. The dim light made everything look eerie. As I turned to leave, I thought I heard a whisper, soft and faint, calling my name. My heart raced. I spun around, but no one was there. Just the shadows lurking in the corners. I felt like something was watching me. I backed away slowly, caught between dread and intrigue. The tales I'd read started to come alive in that empty space. That night I couldn't sleep. I had nightmares filled with twisted versions of the stories I uncovered. I woke up sweating, my thoughts racing. I glanced at my phone, and the screen lit up. A new text appeared from nowhere. It said, "Leave." I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped in these stories I was chasing. Part of me wanted to flee, but another part drew me deeper into the mystery. Then one night, while lying in bed, I felt a presence in the room. I stared at the empty corner, thinking I was imagining things. But I saw a figure there, just standing. My heart pounded. "Why are you here?" it asked softly. I blinked hard, but when I opened my eyes, nothing was there. My heart raced faster and something felt wrong. Now I can't shake the feeling that I'm not alone. It's worse since that visit. I wonder what's happening at that old house. I keep thinking about those stories and what might still be lurking in the shadows. My curiosity could cost me. Am I inviting trouble? I didn't know how deep I had gone until it was too late, and that's where I am now. Just me, haunted by echoes, questioning if I should have listened to the warnings. I still hear whispers in the night. I wonder if they are trying to tell me something, or if I've awakened an old curse. In this historic neighborhood, the line between legend and reality is fading fast. The next morning, I decided to go to the library. I needed more information about the house and the legends swirling around it. Maybe I could find old newspaper articles or records about the missing people. I grabbed my bag and left my apartment, feeling a mix of apprehension and determination. The library smelled of old books and dust. I could hear whispers from patrons buried in their own research. I walked toward the local history section, scanning the shelves for anything on the neighborhood. As I sifted through the stacks, a wave of unease washed over me. It felt like the shadows were closing in. After an hour of searching, I found a file labeled Historic Abandoned Homes. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages filled with black and white photos and newspaper clippings. One article caught my attention. It detailed a family that had vanished from the house in the 1970s. The headline read, "Mysterious Disappearance, No Trace Left Behind." My skin prickled. I could feel the weight of their story pressing down on me. As I read further, I noticed a similar trend. Other families had also lived there for a brief period before disappearing without a trace. The last family to occupy the house was said to have experienced strange disturbances. They reported hearing voices, footsteps, and feeling watched. The article ended with a warning, suggesting the house was a magnet for misfortune. I couldn't shake the sense of dread creeping up my spine. Had I been drawn into something darker than I imagined? I looked up from the article, trying to steady my breathing. I wanted to get out of there, but something kept me looking for more. Maybe there was more I could learn. That's when I saw it. A small handwritten note tucked between the pages of another book. I pulled it out slowly and read it. The note simply said, "Don't go inside." My heart dropped. I looked around the library, half expecting someone to confront me, but no one seemed to notice. I decided that enough was enough. I had to talk to someone who lived nearby. Maybe a local resident could shed light on the stories. As I left the library, a storm brewed in the sky. The wind picked up, and dark clouds rolled overhead. It felt like nature was reflecting my anxiety. I walked down the street, my phone buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Another text. "You shouldn't be here." My stomach twisted. I looked over my shoulder, scanning the area. The streets were empty. Had someone seen me reading that note? Just as I reached my destination, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the abandoned house. It pulled me in like a magnet. My heart raced as I hesitated. Should I just turn around? Or should I continue? Would this be the moment I uncovered the truth? Or was I walking right into danger? I took a deep breath and let my curiosity guide me again. I stepped toward the sounds, knowing that whatever awaited me would reveal more than I was prepared to face. The air felt heavy as I approached the front of the house. The once grand structure loomed before me, its windows like dark eyes watching my every move. The crash echoed again, a sound of broken wood and metal. I was so close now. I felt my heart pound against my ribs. The front door creaked open as if inviting me inside. I hesitated at the threshold. This was it. I knew I should turn back. I remembered the note in the library, but a strange pull urged me forward, curiosity clawing at my insides. I stepped across the threshold. Inside, the air was stale, mingled with the scent of decay. Dust motes danced in the faint light that filtered through the grimy windows. My eyes adjusted quickly, and I scanned the room. Empty. Nothing but shadows, and the remnants of a life once lived. I noticed a staircase leading to the second floor, but something up there felt intimidating, dangerous. Then I heard it again, the soft whisper of what might have been a voice. It came from deeper within the house. I couldn't make out the words, but the sound was unmistakable. I felt a chill creep up my back. Instinctively, I wanted to call out, to demand whoever it was reveal themselves, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I took a cautious step forward. As I moved deeper into the house, I noticed pictures lining the walls. Families frozen in time, smiling faces that felt disturbingly out of place. But one picture made me stop. It was of a family that seemed eerily familiar, their features mirroring those in the articles I read. They bore the same blank stares as the ones who had vanished. I felt dizzy, a wave of nausea washing over me. Suddenly I heard a loud thump from above, followed by a low, dissonant groan. I looked up, my heart racing. Maybe it was just the house settling, but it felt alive, almost as if it were reacting to my presence. I was losing my resolve. Just then, I felt a presence beside me. I turned rapidly, but there was only air. My breath quickened. Had I imagined it? Was I losing my mind? I needed to get out, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching me from the shadows. I couldn't leave without knowing more. My curiosity was overpowering my fear. I began to inch toward the staircase, every step heavy and deliberate. I reached for the rail, my hand brushing against the wood, and felt a jolt of cold run through me. Something was off. Just as I took my first step up, a loud crash from the back of the house made me jump. It sounded unnervingly close. I froze. The noise shattered the stillness and sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. Someone, or something, was in this house with me. I turned to run, but before I could move, the front door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. I was trapped. Shadows twisted and crept around me, closing in fast. Fear surged, and a voice in my head screamed for me to escape, but I needed to understand what was happening here. That's when I heard the whisper again, clearer this time. It said, "Help us." My pulse quickened, caught between terror and a compulsion to find out more. I stood frozen, the weight of the house pressing in on me. "Help us." The whisper came again, softer now, as if it were beckoning me to follow. A chill ran down my spine. I had to see where it was coming from. My feet moved on their own, guiding me through the labyrinth of shadows. As I made my way through the dim hall, I glanced at the walls where the faded wallpaper clung to the peeling paint. The pictures I had seen earlier flickered in my mind, faces locked in eternal smiles, yet somehow oozing desperation. I swallowed hard, pushing aside the unsettling thought that the house itself held memories too dark to picture. The whisper continued, a thread of sound weaving its way through the air. I turned a corner and stopped dead. The open doorway ahead led to a small room, its door creaking under the weight of long-abandoned silence. Was that where the voice was coming from? I took a slow step forward, heart pounding in my ears. Inside, the room was bare except for a lone old rocking chair swaying slightly, as if someone had just stood up. A frayed quilt hung limply over the back, and a small table stood next to it, littered with objects that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. Dust coated everything, making it hard to see clearly in the low light. I hesitated, remembering the cold touch on the staircase railing. My instinct screamed at me to leave, but I pushed ahead, driven by a need to know what lurked in this forgotten space. As I crossed the threshold, the whisper sharpened, entwining with the creaks of the house in a chilling harmony. Suddenly, the door I had entered through slammed shut behind me, echoing like thunder. Panic rose in my chest, and I dashed for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The feel of the wood against my palms chilled me to the bone. I was trapped inside this eerie room. The rocking chair stopped moving, and for a moment everything felt impossibly still. My breath became shallow as I turned around, scanning the room for any sign of life. That's when I saw it. A small, dusty mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. Something moved behind me in the reflection. A fleeting shadow that wasn't mine. I whipped around, pulse racing. My heart pounded in rhythm with the whisper now, an urgency wrapping itself around me. "Help us!" it cried once more, a plea wrapped in desperation. I had to find out what this house wanted from me. Before I could gather my thoughts, the mirror rippled as if disturbed by unseen fingers. I stepped closer, leaning in. In its depths, I saw shapes forming, faces twisted in fear, wide eyes pleading for release. The horror gripped me, choking my breath. But I couldn't look away. I had stumbled onto something profound, something that held the key to the mystery of this house. Then everything went dark. The room spun, and I felt myself falling, not toward the ground, but into the mirror. The last thing I heard before the world faded was the whisper turning into frantic screams. "Don't go!" The darkness engulfed me completely. I felt weightless, floating in an endless void until a sudden sensation pulled me back. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in the small room. I lay on a floor that felt cold and damp beneath me. Groaning, I pushed myself up and looked around. I found myself in a narrow hallway, dimly lit by flickering candlelight. The walls were lined with faded photographs. No, they were more than faded. They were distorted, stretching out in bizarre angles. The faces in the frames resembled those from the mirror, their twisted features now permanently trapped in these chilling images. A shiver ran through me, and I instinctively pulled away from the walls. I took a cautious step forward, confusion overwhelming me. Where was I? Was this another part of the house or something else entirely? I could still hear the echo of their cries in my ears, the desperation clear. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. Faint whispers drifted through the air, creating a dissonance that set me on edge. "Help us. Save us." It was a chorus of pleading voices, resonating from further down the hall. My heart raced as I pressed on, my feet moving despite my apprehension. I had to understand what was happening. As I neared the end of the corridor, a door stood ajar, its hinges groaning as if inviting me in. I hesitated, glancing back. The hallway behind me seemed to extend endlessly, swallowed by shadows. The sounds of despair encroached upon me, drowning out my thoughts. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. Inside, I was met with a sight that froze me in place. This room was a macabre gallery, a collection of mirrors, all reflecting distorted versions of myself. Each one showed a different expression: fear, sadness, rage. I felt as if they were peering into my soul, stripping me of my layers. I clenched my fists, unwilling to be overwhelmed. But then I noticed something else. Amid the chaotic reflections, there was one mirror that stood clear. The surface shimmered like water, and I stepped closer, drawn to it. As I gazed into it, I saw not just myself, but a figure behind me. A shadowy silhouette watching and waiting. I spun around, heart in my throat, but the room was empty. My breath came in quick bursts. Was my mind playing tricks on me? The weight of dread settled over me. But before I could ponder further, I heard a crash echo through the air. It sounded like something had toppled over in the hallway. Gripped by a mix of fear and necessity, I rushed back out into the corridor, scanning for the source of the sound. The whispers had intensified, swirling around me. My pulse raced faster. I needed to escape whatever I had awoken in this cursed house. As I turned back, the door I had just come through slammed shut. The whispers crescendoed into frantic screams. "Don't leave us!" The pressure of the house's confinement pushed on me again, and in the depths of the turmoil, I felt a cold hand brush against my neck. I whipped around, but no one was there. The air was thick with tension, and panic surged in my chest. I needed to know what was going on, who had reached for me. I could feel time slipping through my fingers, and whatever was in this house was closing in fast. I had to find a way out before it was too late. I stumbled further down the hallway, each step heavy with urgency. The whispers continued, twisting around me like smoke. I pressed my back against the wall, willing my heart to slow. With trembling hands, I reached for the door on my right. It looked different from the others, older, more worn. Maybe it led to an exit. I turned the knob slowly, praying it wouldn't creak. With a satisfying click, it swung open wider than I expected, revealing a room bathed in shadows. Inside, the air was stale, as if it hadn't been disturbed in years. Dust particles floated lazily in the dim light, illuminated by a single overhead bulb that flickered ominously. My eyes adjusted, and I took in the space. Shelves lined with books, some titles barely readable, filled one wall. A heavy wooden desk sat in the center, cluttered with yellowed papers and an old typewriter that seemed out of place. I felt a pull toward the desk, as if something there called to me. Cautiously, I stepped inside. As I examined the papers, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like chains. "Don't ignore us," they wailed. I tried to focus, but found it hard to think. Then I noticed a journal partially hidden beneath a pile of papers. The cover was worn, and I felt an urgent need to open it. I flipped through the brittle pages until a chilling entry caught my eye. It was a name: Eliza Hawthorne. Something about it sent a jolt through me. I had seen that name before, but where? Suddenly the door behind me slammed shut, rattling the frame. I spun around, heart pounding in my chest. I felt trapped. The room was alive with energy, and the whispers had transformed into an almost tangible force, crawling under my skin. But then I remembered. The mirror in the gallery. Eliza's face had lingered in my mind, distorted yet familiar. I raced back to the door, turning the knob with urgency, but it wouldn't budge. The panic rose again. I was losing my grip. "Help us!" The cries were louder now, echoing in my mind. I felt a chill wash over me. Eliza's presence seemed to pulse in the air, an invitation laced with desperation. In that moment, it struck me. Whatever had happened in this house was tied to her. Was she one of those trapped in the whispers? A flicker of movement caught my eye. From the corner of the room, a shadow detached itself from the wall. It wasn't just a trick of the light. The shadow slinked closer, taking form. And in a heartbeat, I saw Eliza's face, her eyes wide with sorrow, mouth moving silently. "Help me," she mouthed, reaching out, fingers stretching through the darkness toward me. Then everything went dark. The bulb flickered out, plunging the room into a pitch-black silence. My breath hitched as I stood frozen, torn between fear and an indescribable need to reach her. Maybe she knew how to escape this nightmare. I couldn't see, but I could hear. A soft sigh echoed in the dark, followed by the unmistakable sound of something sharp scraping against the floor. My heart raced again, and I braced myself for whatever was about to happen. In that moment, I knew one thing. I had to find Eliza. If I didn't, I might end up just like her. The darkness closed in around me, suffocating and thick. I clenched my fists, trying to calm my shaky breath. I could barely make out the outline of the desk, but it was the whispers that truly overwhelmed me now. They twisted through the blackness, turning from faint murmurs into desperate shouts. "Help us!" The voices called again, but this time I felt the panic seep deeper into my bones. I needed to make sense of what was happening. Where was the door? I took a cautious step forward, hoping my memories of the room would guide me, but my foot hit nothing solid. I stumbled, nearly losing my balance. "Follow me." A soft voice broke through the chaos, slicing through my fear. It was her voice. Eliza. I felt drawn to it, like a lifeline in the dark. "Please." I took another step, my heart pounding louder than the whispers. The sound of scraping grew closer, but I ignored it. "Eliza?" I croaked, desperately searching for her in the shadows. "Where are you?" The whispers fell silent. I held my breath, straining to hear anything. The sudden hush left an aching void. Then something shifted in the air, like a breeze had swept through the room. I braced myself, expecting to see Eliza's face in front of me, illuminated by some ghostly light. But nothing. I moved forward again, slowly this time, hand trailing along the desk. I could feel the rough wood beneath my fingers. Then, I lost my balance once more. This time I knocked over a stack of papers. They fluttered like fallen leaves, scattering into the obscurity around me. "Come back." Eliza's voice came again, but she sounded distant. I felt the pull of her urgency growing, weaving its way through my fear. I needed to see her. I couldn't just stand here. I was determined to find her. I took one more step. Suddenly, a cold hand shot out from the darkness, wrapping around my wrist. I gasped, heart racing. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it grip me, firm and unyielding. "Eliza?" The hand tightened. Panic clawed at my throat. "No, let me go." But the grip only grew stronger. I thrashed against it, but it held firm, pulling me toward the darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it released me. I staggered backward, breathless. "What do you want?" I shouted, anger mixing with fear. I heard a soft whisper. "Find the truth." The lights flickered back on as if my question had somehow activated them. Blinking against the sudden brightness, I looked around. Papers lay scattered on the floor, but something caught my eye. Amidst the chaos was a photograph, half buried beneath the debris. I took a deep breath and bent down to retrieve it. The image was faded, but as I brushed the dust away, I saw Eliza's face again, brighter than I had ever seen it. There was a date scrawled on the back, 1932. My stomach dropped. The numbers felt like a key, unlocking something deep within me. That's when I heard it, the sound of footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. Panic surged through me again. I dropped the photo, heart pounding in my ears. Someone was here, in the house with me. I pressed my back against the wall, heart racing, straining to hear the footsteps. They echoed in the silence, drawing closer. I squinted into the light, trying to make out a shape, a figure, anything. I called out, "Who's there?" My voice came out shaky and weak. The footsteps stopped. Everything froze. I held my breath, listening. Seconds felt like hours. Then I saw a shadow, moving just beyond the bright halo of the lights. My heart sank as dread washed over me. I knew I shouldn't approach, but the urge to confront whatever this was overwhelmed me. "Show yourself!" I shouted, more boldly than I felt. The response was a chilling silence, like the house had swallowed its own sound. Sweat trickled down my back as I took a cautious step forward. Suddenly the figure appeared, a man, but vaguely familiar, wearing clothes that looked like they had stepped out of a time capsule from decades ago. "Eliza!" he called out. But it wasn't a plea. It was a command, sharp and echoing through the room, as if he expected her to materialize beside him. "Who are you?" I breathed, unwilling to step closer. "What do you want?" His eyes locked onto mine. They glimmered with something intense and unsettling. "You shouldn't be here," he replied, his voice low and gravelly. "This place has a history." Instinct told me to flee, but something held me in place. "What history? What happened to Eliza?" The man stepped forward, the tension rising in the room. "You need to leave. It's not safe. You've awakened something." A rush of anger surged through me. Awakened what? I have a right to know. My hands clenched into fists, but fear simmered beneath my defiance. I felt trapped in a web of confusion and age-old secrets. "All that matters is that you should go," he warned, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "They're not fond of intruders." His eyes darted as if something lurked just beyond the margins of our sight. That's when I noticed it. The soft sound of whispering returning, but not from the shadows. It enveloped the room, swirling around us like a fog. "Help us," they echoed again. "What are they?" I asked, fear creeping in around the edges of my courage. "Souls caught between worlds," he said, voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, genuine concern washing over his features. "You need to leave now." Then without warning, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness. My breath hitched as panic set in. I could barely see him, just a dark silhouette amid the void. "Get out!" he shouted, the urgency in his tone crackling through the air. "Now!" I turned to run, but the shadows shifted and the whispers grew louder, almost drowning out my thoughts. My heart pounded as I scrambled toward the door, desperate to escape. As I reached the entrance, a hand shot out from the corner of the room, grabbing my arm. I screamed, but the voice that followed was not that of the man, but Eliza's. "Find the truth," she urged, her words slicing through the chaos. In that moment, I realized I hadn't been abandoned. I was being pulled deeper into a mystery that transcended time. But there was no time for hesitation. I had to make a choice. Flee, or uncover the truth that threatened to consume me. I took a deep breath and tore myself away from the grip of the past. As I pushed through the door, I swore I could hear her whisper one final time. "Help us." I burst through the door, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. I stumbled down the porch steps, the world around me blurred into an anxious haze. I could still hear Eliza's voice in my head, pleading with me. It pulled at my heartstrings, and I couldn't shake the chill that followed me outside. I ran toward my car, breathless and shaken. The night felt different now. It was charged with a danger I couldn't quite place. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking as I tried to unlock the door. When I finally got inside, I slammed the door shut, cutting off the house and its secrets behind me. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My heart raced as I replayed everything in my mind. The man, Eliza, the whispers, they all tied together somehow. I had to understand. I couldn't just leave it all behind. With a deep breath, I pulled out my phone and searched for any information about the house. I found a few articles, but nothing significant. Most were mild warnings about urban legends and creepy tales, but nothing about a girl named Eliza. I needed to dig deeper. Just then I heard a faint tapping on the window. I flinched, my heart leaping into my throat. I turned to look, but there was no one there. I peered into the shadows cast by the streetlights, anxiety twisting in my gut. Maybe it was my imagination, or maybe it wasn't. I started the engine, the soft rumble grounding me for a moment. I hesitated, then drove away from the house, but my mind was still anchored there. I took a familiar turn, heading toward town. I needed more than just the internet. I needed to talk to someone who knew the truth. As I drove, I recalled the local librarian, a woman named Mrs. Collins who had lived in the area for ages. If anyone knew the history of that house, it would be her. I pulled into the library parking lot and took a deep breath before stepping out. The building loomed in front of me, a little worn but still standing strong, Inside, the smell of paper and ink wrapped around me like a warm blanket. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead. I glanced around, hoping to spot Mrs. Collins among the shelves. "Can I help you?" a young librarian asked, her eyes bright and curious. "I'm looking for Mrs. Collins," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's at the back in the research room," the young woman gestured. I nodded and made my way through the aisles, every step sending ripples of anticipation through me. As I approached the research room, I heard muffled voices. Just as I was about to knock, the door creaked open and Mrs. Collins stepped out. She looked surprised to see me. "Ah, I didn't expect anyone here this late," she said, adjusting her glasses. "What brings you in?" I hesitated, caught between the urge to unload everything and the weight of uncertainty. "I need to know about a house, one on Maple Street." Her expression shifted, a flicker of recognition flashing across her face. "The old Hawthorne place?" I nodded eagerly. "Yes. I've heard strange things." Before I could say more, she motioned for me to follow her back into the room. I glimpsed something then, a shadow moving by the window. I turned quickly, but it was gone. "Let's see what we can find," Mrs. Collins said, oblivious to my distraction. She led me to a stack of old books and papers. "You might be looking at a legend, but there's always some truth behind them." That's when I saw it. A dusty old book on a shelf labeled Local Folklore. I reached for it just as the lights flickered and a sudden chill swept through the room. Before I could react, I heard a whisper again, clear and insistent. "Help us." Mrs. Collins looked up, concern etched on her face. "Did you?" "I'm not alone," I replied, panic rising once more. "Someone else is here." And just like that, a new layer of uncertainty fell around me. I had stepped into something far deeper than I ever imagined. The weight of those whispered words hung heavily in the air, wrapping around me like chains. I had thought that leaving the house behind would grant me relief, but it felt like a futile escape. Mrs. Collins' expression shifted to one of concern. "What do you mean?" she asked, narrowing her eyes with worry. I opened my mouth to explain, but the words caught in my throat. The memories of the house surged back. Eliza's desperate plea, the man from the shadows, the feeling of cold fingers pressed against my skin. My heart raced as I fought against the urge to flee. Instead, I took a deep breath. "There's something wrong with the Hawthorne place," I said, forcing urgency into my voice. "I heard voices. They wanted help. Something happened there, and I need to know the truth." Mrs. Collins studied me carefully, and I could sense her hesitance. She looked toward the old bookshelf, her fingers brushing across the dusty covers. "There's a history," she finally said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "You're not the first to be drawn by that house. Many have tried to uncover its secrets, but few have lived to tell the tale." The intensity of her gaze sent a shiver down my spine. I sensed that she was offering me insight, but there was a darkness lingering in her words, an unspoken warning. "What happened to them?" I pressed, wanting her to share what had haunted that house long before me. "The Hawthorns were a family who lived there back in the 1930s, she recounted, her voice trembling slightly. "They vanished under mysterious circumstances. Some say the house swallowed them whole." A pause hung between us, thick with tension. "Others insist they tried to communicate with the living, their souls trapped in a cycle. Those who ignore the cries do so at their own risk." "Is there a way to help them?" I asked, biting on my lip, desperation fueling my voice. "We can't just leave them there." She looked at me hard. "Some say a sacrifice is required to release the souls. But be warned, what you decide could change everything. You might lose yourself along the way." Every part of me screamed to turn back, to run away from the madness, but in that moment, I felt a surge of determination. I couldn't abandon Eliza or the restless souls of her family. "I need to go back to the house," I declared. Mrs. Collins sighed heavily, glancing at the door as if she expected something unwelcome to come rushing in. "If you insist on this path, you must remember, once you uncover these truths, you may never be the same." The darkened air felt charged, intensifying the weight of her warning. I nodded slowly, acknowledging the peril that waited for me. I left the library, my mind racing with what I had learned. The car ride back to the Hawthorne place felt surreal, like driving toward the heart of a storm. Memories of whispers filled my thoughts, spinning faster and faster until I arrived at the house. The air was still, a quiet that felt unnatural. I parked on the gravel driveway and hesitated, the ominous silhouette of the house casting shadows that seemed to beckon me closer. I turned to look at my hands. They trembled slightly, a reminder of the fear that had once gripped me. I stepped out, heart thudding in my chest. Every step toward the creaking door felt like a countdown to something inevitable. I pushed through the entrance, fully aware that whatever lay inside awaited me. Once inside, I was engulfed in darkness again. Flickering candlelight struggled to illuminate the haunting atmosphere. The whispers swirled around me, now louder, more pronounced, as if recognizing my arrival. "Help us," they echoed, a chorus of sorrow pressing against my ears. "Where are you?" I whispered into the shadows, a sense of purpose fueling me. I felt the unmistakable pull towards the back of the house, as if the very walls urged me to follow. As I turned a corner, the air grew heavier. The rocking chair from before sat in the far room, still and eerie. It matched the fear coiling deep within me, but I wouldn't turn back. I approached it slowly, trusting that something vital awaited me. I hesitated, feeling a chill run down my spine. I remembered Mrs. Collins' words. A sacrifice is required. But what did that mean? What could I give that would appease the souls trapped in limbo? I heard a clicking sound and my heart raced. The door I had entered through slammed shut, sealing the darkness behind me. Panic tensed my muscles, but I reminded myself of why I was here. I needed to find the truth and free them. Then, the shadows thickened, swirling around me. And for the first time I saw them, figures emerging from the darkness, their faces distressed yet hopeful. Eliza stood in front of me, her eyes pleading. "Help us," she cried, extending her hand toward me. "What do you want me to do?" I shouted, fighting against the overwhelming dread as their voices drowned out my thoughts. I felt their presence, an ancient energy fueled by sorrow and desperation. "Find our memories," Eliza's voice urged, barely audible above the chaos. I looked around, desperation mixing with confusion. How could I uncover what was lost? The pictures lining the walls, faces twisted in despair, gripped my attention. I approached one, a family portrait that flickered in the candlelight. "Release us," they whispered in unison, their expressions shifting to something more intense, a convergence of pain and resolve I couldn't ignore. With a deep breath, I reached for the photograph, pulling it free from its resting place. I focused hard, trying to channel my intention, believing that my connection to the truth would somehow align with their yearning. "I promise to uncover your memory," I vowed, my voice fierce with determination. A sudden surge of energy pulsated through the air, the echoes of their cries filling the loneliness of the night. The room trembled as I felt a strange connection between myself and the spirits lingering within. The weight of the house lifted slightly, a sign of impending release, but just as swiftly the shadows darkened again. The temperature plummeted and a force pushed against me, threatening to consume the light. "Help us," they roared, their voices trembling through the walls, each sound piercing the very air I breathed. "Wait." I could barely think, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. What more could be done? What was I being sacrificed to, my sanity or my essence? The house itself twisted around me, distorting time and space. But as I stood there, I knew that there was one final decision to be made. I closed my eyes, bracing myself against the rising chaos. I couldn't abandon them. I had to be brave. "Show me," I shouted, hoping that whatever force bound us together would reveal the truth, the price of freedom that could release both them and me. In an instant, the darkness shattered, and a blinding light surged all around me. I felt the weight of history uncoil, memories tumbling into the light, a flood of images, laughter, and loss wrapped tightly into a single moment. And just as quickly, it was over. I found myself back in the entryway, breathing heavily, and the weight felt lifted. The air shimmered with clarity. But the house remained, a vessel of sorrow still holding on to unspoken secrets. The whispers had stilled. I stepped out into the cool night, realizing that while I had witnessed a fraction of their reality, their stories, Eliza's and the Hawthorne families, remained untold in the world. The danger had passed, but questions lingered. I thought of Eliza, the man in shadows, and the desperate pleading that reverberated in my heart. As I drove away, I knew I had not fully escaped the house. It had snared something in me, a longing to know more, to delve into the shadows of its history, but maybe that was okay. I would carry their memories with me, and perhaps one day I'd return to finish what had begun. I left the neighborhood behind me, but I couldn't shake the lingering questions. Had I truly helped Eliza? Was the house still holding its breath, waiting for another soul to heed its call? Or was it truly finished with me? Some answers would remain cloaked in shadows, leading me down a path of haunting echoes and fractured memories, forever tethered to the past.